Hello and bienvenue. I'm your host Anaïs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Her Career, Her Coach, the podcast dedicated to empowering women to build a career they are truly passionate about. I know today's episode is going to be an exciting one, as today's guest is the author of Visible Strength and the founder of Visibility. She is a true advocate for crafting your career around your natural gifts and talents. So without further ado, dear listener, it's time to welcome Mary. Mary, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone.
Yes. All right. So for anyone who hasn't met you yet, would that be okay to share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Mary Mosope Adeyemi. I am Nigerian by birth, but I've lived in the UK, in England for probably close to 20 years. So home being Nigeria is still home, but the UK is also still very much home for me. As I've kind of spent more of my lifetime in the UK than I did, whilst I was growing up in Nigeria. Who am I inherently is passionate, purposeful, people-oriented, and I get to live out those traits across many spaces and fields. I'm a finance professional. I've worked as a credit risk manager / credit investor for probably the last 15 years. Love my work. You probably find out why really soon, but love my work, love what I do every single day. But alongside that, I've always been someone who's been quite passionate about equitable career growth. And by equitable career growth, what I mean is that, seeing people from diverse backgrounds or when I say diverse backgrounds, I mean, whether it's race or gender or socioeconomic construct, being able to kind of, be successful in spaces that may have historically not necessarily been made for them or created for them in mind, but actually seeing those people thrive as well. And considering that I belong to at least the intersection of I'm a woman and obviously being a Black woman, that has meant many different things in my career. And so I've always been really passionate about seeing people like me really thrive in the workplace. And so consequently, I've been, within the environments that I've worked in and the organizations I've worked in, I've always kind of done a lot of stuff around training and, development and recruiting programs and the like. I've kind of almost inserted myself by force into those types of work streams. And that really just built this great passion for personal development. And as I said, like equitable career development of professionals. And that passion then led me to found my company, Visibility. And we are Visibility is a social first organization. And, we're out to improve the outcomes for women, Black women in particular, in the marketplace through inspiration, coaching, and community. And so I've been doing that work now for probably about 5 years. And what that entails is I have a talk show. I don't really call it a podcast in that sense, but it's a talk show where we're kind of sharing stories. But the end goal is the same, to have these conversations with really inspiring women and kind of, get inspired, kind of glean inspiration from them. And then also I do a lot of work around sort of career strategy and coaching, where I work either one-on-one or in group settings or in, big event settings with career professionals. And then also the last piece is around communities. Just the offstream of all of the work that I do means that I get to work with different people, and then I, put them together in a group, and then they get to work with themselves and teach each other and kind of grow together. And so that's in essence sort of the work that I do. And I'm doing that alongside kind of still growing my career and doing the work that I do in finance. So that's kind of a little bit about me, my background and what I do. In terms of like academia, I'm a graduate of Lancaster University. I studied accounting and finance in school. I went on to do my master's in management at Imperial College. I'm a chartered accountant as well. I'm a qualified chartered accountant, although I've never really worked as an accountant for a day in my life, interestingly. But yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about me, and I'm sure we'll get into more as we talk.
Well, Mary, you're the reason why I don't drink coffee. Just hearing you right now, I'm like, yes, you go for it. Obviously, there is just the sound in this, but if you were to have like a picture of me, I'm just like pretty much tearing up to my ceiling as I'm hearing you. And then obviously, I very much resonate with your mission. I love everything about it. And indeed, we need to just unpack all of that, dive into that a little bit more. I love the 3 Ps that form your value,
Yeah.
People, passion, and purpose, essentially.
Perfect.
Love that. Mm.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. I never really thought about it as three P's, even though it is three P's, but yeah, no one's ever really said that back to me. So yeah, but you would realize really quickly that I pretty much think in frameworks. If something is not a framework, it probably doesn't stick in my mind. So you would usually hear things like 6 S's, 3 P's, 5 T's. It's like a regular thing. It's the way my brain works.
Well, I love frameworks, and I feel like a lot of people also rely on framework, like in a good, positive way. I feel like sometimes framework are just so much easier to comprehend for most people anyway. So I love that. On that note, we're going to dive a little bit more into your career in a minute. But if I were to ask you, because you are obviously a woman of many talent, you're busy doing a lot of things. What is it that you love the most about what you're doing and how your career is, set up, if I can put it this way?
What do I love the most about my career, I think, is that it brings pretty much all of the elements of myself and allows me to use them in some way. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of crafting careers around your strengths. Is I genuinely feel like I am in a career that leverages my strengths, but also allows me to grow my strengths very intentionally and gives me avenues to develop other things that maybe perhaps are like, I would say are maybe my lesser strengths. I won't necessarily say development points, but I'm like they're strengths, but they're maybe not as acute. And so what that means is, as a credit investor, as a credit risk manager, my day-to-day work is leveraging financial information, of companies to make decisions as to whether or not the organizations I work for can give them money, basically, and then eventually get that money back. And so it means like, for me, being good with numbers, being good with financials, being good in critical thinking, being extremely analytical, and being able to read a huge amount of information and assimilate it and put pieces together, being good at stakeholder management and communication, influencing, selling an idea or selling a pitch or proposal. And then also being good with people in terms of building relationships that matter and the like. Those are all things that are very much in my strength zone. And so when I get to work every single day, I always get to work feeling like whatever the challenge I face, there's something in my core bank that I can rely on to be successful today. And so that's one of the reasons why, probably even the primary reason why I've kind of extended my stay in this particular sort of career field is I like numbers, I like finance, I like learning about different companies, I like talking to people, I like providing solutions, I like the idea of taking a bunch of information and synthesizing and making a decision at the end. That's inherently who I am. And then I just get to be that every single day at work.
I should have recorded that for, anyone coming to me was like, oh my God, like, I don't think this is possible to actually, be truly who you are and truly thrive at work. So, what, Mary, you're the reason why I've created this podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about your career. Let's dive a little bit more into what would have been your top 3 career achievements.
Oh, wow.
I know, no pressure.
Top 3 career achievements. I don't even know. I mean, there are many things that are sort of big moments, like maybe big client moments or big deals that I've worked on and things like that. Many of those I can't actually talk particularly about because obviously in my industry, a lot of things are very like private and proprietary and so on and so on. And so what I would say, I think, are maybe the more monumental things for me are achievements around one, like making my own choices, I would say, is like a big thing, and not being forced down any particular pathway. I find a lot of career joy right now because I know like I am in my space. I could have been doing anything else. And actually, I remember when I started my career, I started in banking, but I started in the mergers and acquisitions department. And, for those who know much about finance, that is a space within finance that is so well known for a lack of work-life balance, extreme hours, very long nights, like long days, longer nights. it's one of those, you learn a lot, you earn a lot, but you also work a lot. And I remember doing my internship and having the opportunity and having the potential to earn so much so quickly at the start of my career. And I actually chose not to, because I knew that this will not work for the lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't want a lifestyle that was always all about work, even though sometimes I think now and I think, girl, you're always working anyway. At the time, I didn't want a career where I would, where working at 2, 3 in the morning was an obligation.
And also I think it was just one thing, right? Versus at the moment, you're doing a lot of different things. And I think this is what works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I didn't want that. I remember going home on the train after one of my days. Like I got home at like maybe 3 in the morning, and about 7:30, I was back on the train on my way back to the office. And I remember just bursting out into tears, like in the middle of the train. I was on the district line. If anybody is in London, the district. I was coming from home. I was on the district line going into the city. And I randomly combusted into like a flood of tears. And that was just because I just knew I was basically that was my spirit telling myself, this is not your life. So, the courage to choose for myself, despite all of the perks. And I had all my friends wanted to work in M&A. It was almost like I was in the prime position, but I was giving it up, because I was like, this is not my life. I wanted to do finance, but I wanted to do it in a way that I thought was sustainable and that would make me happy and not tired and exhausted. So I think a lot of people don't find freedom in making their own choices, and they get dragged by their friends, or, they see the sort of shiny object. And even though they know internally that, this may not necessarily be for them, it may not necessarily be the lifestyle that they want, they're unable to make the decision otherwise. And I think I'm always very proud of the moment for me where I kind of said, hey, this is great. I will learn a lot, but this is not my lifestyle. And I'm going to find something else within finance that would be more palatable for me. So I think that's definitely one sort of big achievement. I thought that if I didn't make that choice for myself, I don't think I would have had the longevity I've had in finance to date. And I work a lot with bankers. They're probably one of my primary clients in the firm. So I get to see what they do every single day. And there's never been a day where I've regretted that choice. So in many ways, that's sort of one big thing I lean into. What would I say the second thing is, I think in terms of achievements, I think it would be perhaps resilience. I've had a few knocks in my career, and knocks in the sense of, I think there are many things that you can face, whether it's, the climbing the learning curve, which can be brutal. I started my career in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of the great global financial crisis of 2007.
Oh, wow. Happy days.
Yeah. So happy days. And it was tough, and it was a lot. And I was at work, and my colleagues were getting fired every single day.
Oh, wow.
There was a lot of pressure. And I think, the resilience to keep growing in the midst of that. And then also, in a space where people didn't have time to necessarily invest in you as a young person. Everyone was kind of looking out for themselves and finding and seeking ways to learn and to grow and to take feedback and to keep on prodding along, even when the feedback is not great, to kind of keep showing up the next day and being ambitious, but with contentment. So kind of saying, hey, I'm going to do the next thing, but I'm also happy with where I am, and I'm going to choose to grow intentionally here. And I write in my book, which I actually haven't talked about, but I'm a recently published author. And I write in my book literally a whole chapter on health and the numerous health challenges that have come at different points in my career, whether it was mental health or physical health I had to have a surgery at a certain point, and that's not even that long ago. Dealing with grief after I lost my dad and still show up, find a spot and a space and still show up and do what you need to do every single day, I think was a big thing. And so resilience, I think, is the last chapter of my book, and I'm actually leaning over to grab it as I talk. There's a statement I made, and it was just something around, and that kind of resonates with me, simply that, the people that you watch and the people that you see who have thrived in their career and who have stayed, they're there because they've, not for any other reason, but because they've stayed, not really anything else. So it's like through inevitable like setbacks and failures and whatever, they are there because they've just stayed the path. And I think for me, that's a big thing is staying when you can always leave, but knowing why you're there anyway and choosing every single day, but not kind of feeling stuck. So that's one thing. And I think the other piece I would say is my balance. I am not just one thing. And it took me some time to accept that. But now that's actually my way of life. I'm not just one thing. And so consequently, I need to have a career that allows me to be all the various things that I am for me to kind of be happy. And so I've been intentional about making sure my employers understand that. I work with them to ensure they get what they need from me, and I never drop the ball. But I also make it clear that I kind of need to do this other stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best of me. And so when it comes to people talking about bringing your full self to work, this is where sometimes the challenge is we feel as though we can't bring our full selves to work because, hey, maybe somebody's going to be unhappy or I'm not going to be able to do my job fully. But I actually feel as though my ability to do both things, to be a finance professional and do a good job there and enjoy finance and do this, but also still be a career strategist and an author and be a speaker and a workshop facilitator and all the other things that come in that. And then some of my other charitable pursuits and other things outside of work, that gives me a very holistic experience of myself. Doesn't get me to any one thing. And I think sometimes when I work with people, especially when we're kind of working on career stuff together, I find that they feel that they need to define themselves and they need to define themselves in a particular way. And my thing is, hey, you can be many things. Why choose? You just have to create space, right? You have to create space for the things that you do want to do. You might have to prioritize one over another in certain moments and points, but you'd never really have to give up on any one particular part of yourself. And so that's one thing as I think through, my career, it would be that, the ability to continue to give space and give expression to all of the facets of who I am. So so I think it will really be those three things. I think you asked for three, yes. But there probably more.
I did.
But if you ask for three, I would say, choosing, making my own choices, having the courage, confidence, and clarity to make my own choice in my career and not be deterred by anyone else. Number two, the resilience through really, really difficult times and just, choosing to keep showing up and keep doing it, even when I have the option, the very open option to just not do it. And the final piece would be about, just finding balance and creating expression for who I really am across multiple facets and allowing all the various stakeholders in my life understand that this is the way I get to show up fully. If they want the 100% of me, they need to allow me be 100% of me, basically. So those three things, what I would say.
Love it. I mean, I love any answers in that podcast because that's the beauty of it. Every answer and everyone is different. But what I particularly enjoyed listening to you just now is that none of these achievements are like tangible things. You're not talking about a title or a certain amount of salary, or you're not even talking about your book. I mean, you've mentioned that, but I love the fact that those achievements are actually the way you've decided to choose to live your life. And I think this is like priceless because essentially this is accessible to anyone, wherever you're coming from, wherever you're going next. This is also something that anyone can tap into.
Yeah, I agree with that sort of reflection on what I've said. And I think one of the things that I found is you realize that these things are so fleeting. You realize you work so hard for the promotion and then you get it and it's such an anticlimax. I remember I just finished writing a book. And I think we were talking about this earlier. I wrote a book. I wrote a book of books. Like I meet people who tell me, you wrote all of this? And I'm like, yeah, I wrote 346 pages of the career guide that I wish I had when I started out in my career. And I submitted it and I worked on this for maybe about, I don't know, call it about a year. In between, I had surgery. I had major surgery, so I had to put it off. So let's just say I wrote it across a year, but probably full-time about maybe 6 months. I wrote it, worked with a fantastic publisher, great editors, I learned so much. I finished, I submitted my book, and I went into the darkest form of depression that I've ever experienced. It was just like jumping off a cliff, and literally like it was wild. And it doesn't take away the fact that I'm proud of it and the work. But what I mean is like nothing, if your joy and your satisfaction doesn't come internally, all the things you amass will never make up for that.
Love that.
It just
love it.
Make up for that. Much more money. It's just, better lifestyle. It's great. But in the end, if you were not happy before with the little, you will not be happy with the much. So happiness is not happiness and joy are not, they're a state of being. They're not a state of doing or achieving. It's a choice that you're actively making. And so that's what I always think about when I look at myself in the mirror. I'm wondering about the woman that's looking back at me. How proud am I of her? And the things that I'm proud about are the, getting up in the morning, even when you're tired. It's the going to the gym. It's the discipline. It's the, making better financial choices. It's all of it's the process that I'm more proud of. And the product is like the byproduct of the process, but the process and of the process, I think, are the things. But don't get me wrong. Like, of course, like if you graduate school with a first class, you make VP in record time, you get promoted, you get headhunted by one of the biggest firms in the world, you're earning, six figures at under 30 years old, you're running a thriving business, you're working with big companies. Those are all great. Like those are all, they're all amazing. But I always want to be in a place where the day I don't have those things anymore, my life is not going to crumble because I know who I am.
Yes. I mean, do you know what? Essentially, the whole podcast is about hearing stories from various women who have navigated different industries. But I feel like hearing you just now, obviously, I completely resonate with what you're saying. But most importantly, I resonate with it personally, especially in the context that I used to think that I needed or wanted those things, the promotion or the stability and security that comes with a certain threshold in salary and so on. And like you said, I went through the process of it being anticlimactic. I can't say that because of French accent. Point is, very disappointing. And actually, that journey has followed me through entrepreneurship as well, because essentially, if I'm not happy in terms of the person I am right now, even if it means the business is not where exactly I want it to be, there is no point of then carrying it on, because if I don't embrace the journey that it brings for me, then I will never be happy anyway. And I feel like it's something that we talk about these things nowadays. It's fine, it's available, it's out there, but I don't think we talk about them enough, in the sense that subconsciously we have been put in a position whereby we have to have certain things or be in a certain place at a certain age or live our life a certain ways still in 2023, even though we're getting better at it. And I feel like it has taken a toll on so many people and so much unnecessary pressure to be someone they actually are not, fundamentally speaking.
Yeah. Oh, there are many people who are literally, what's the word? They're catfishing, camouflaging, and I don't even know. There's so many people.
Being a chameleon.
That's the right word. They're chameleoning through life. And it's such a pandemic, It's such a pandemic. It's actually it's wild. And I think what we see in the rise of sort of mental health issues is a huge part of that, is people having to face themselves every day when they know that they're not living in their truth, right? Like, I am who I am outside, but when I'm inside, I'm a ghost of myself. That's a place that I actively refuse to be. And I reject everything that comes with that, right? It's just, it's wild. It's actually wild. And I see it all the time. I have so many people who are, more senior to me, and you just see it. The light bulb in their eyes is just out. It's dim.
It's so sad. It makes me really sad, genuinely.
Yeah. It's actually wild. And you see that, and you just see like, whoa, okay, you're MD, you're this, you're that. And we see these things where people work so hard and they become MD, they become partner, and then they quit. Do you realize we actually see that a lot? That's not even like it's not a small feat. They achieve the pinnacle of their career and then they quit and they go backpacking or something like, and I'm like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
You know,
What just happened there?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And you're doing that in your 50s when you could have done it in your 30s. It's just crazy. Or people who have sacrificed their families, they've sacrificed so much for that accolade, for that title. And these achievements they're not secondary. They are important. But, you know, I would just say, hey, major on the majors and minor on the minors, right? Like what is priority? Ultimately, no one's going to put on my tombstone that I was MD at anywhere. They're going to put something else. So they're going to think about how I made them feel and the impact I had on their life and that kind of thing and how I lived my life and not necessarily the title and that type of stuff. That's not going to come up. Yeah.
Talking about not coming up, I mean, this is me trying to make a transition, but shall we have a look at what have been your top 3 career challenges?
There have been many. I will say, I mean, I alluded to a couple, which I probably wouldn't then repeat, you know, things around health and some other things. They've just been life challenges that have also then become career challenges at some point. I'll probably say the first one was a lack of preparedness. I wouldn't say it's lack of preparation. I would say it's a lack of preparedness. And why I make the distinction is I started work being pretty educated. I was a master's level student. So I did what I needed to do to prepare for work or what I felt I could do or I knew to do to prepare for work.
Right.
But then I got into work and realized that the things that I was doing to prepare for work were not actually the things that work required. And so I was full of preparation, but I was actually lacking preparedness. So when I got there, I was like, oh, this is a shell shock. And so in the context of there's so much that is required for you to be successful at work, and they don't teach you those things at school. You know, what you do in school is the technical stuff. You learn the accounting, the finance, the financial analysis, you learn the hard stuff. But then no one teaches you to show up to work on time. No one teaches you how to communicate impactfully. No one teaches you critical thinking. No one teaches you commercial awareness. No one teaches you how to add value and be, you know, and add value intentionally. So I felt that when I got to work, I relied on, you know, hey, you're a first class graduate. You can, I mean, you've done well in school. You will do well at work. And boy, was I surprised, you know, that all of that wasn't translating into the perception people had of me in the workplace. And it was crazy, basically. Yeah. And I really had a difficult time reconciling, like, always being top of my class to now feeling like I was bottom of my class at work. Right. I had a really difficult time like reconciling that. And so, you know, it took me a while. It took me a while to basically figure out, okay, what is really, like, technicals are great, but what is the end goal of the technicals and what is really important? Yeah. So I would say that was one thing. And I really had to engage, you know, I didn't even learn this myself. I don't think. I think it was there. You know, the inflection points for me were finally having a manager who I felt understood me and who I understood and was able to help me decipher feedback really well. Having really good career mentors that gave me guidance, helped me develop, told me what programs and courses and things to take to help me gain certain types of awareness for myself and in my career and changed how I showed up at work every single day. So I think those are some of the key things. So I didn't just stumble on the information, but, you know, I guess a little bit of serendipity was like, you know, getting core people in your life. And I always say I'm a product of really important early intervention. My career could have gone a completely different way, but then there were pivotal moments in my career where there are certain important people that came in and they really helped guide my career in a certain point and were the ones who literally pushed me up the ladder to the next rung. So that's one piece, was around preparedness and just knowing that being great at school doesn't mean you're going to be great at work. And you have to really understand and learn what it's going to take for you to be great at work and translate your technical knowledge into the things that are valuable in the workplace. And that brings me to the second point, was actually number 2. I really didn't understand what was valuable in the workplace. So I'll go to work, I'll do different stuff, but I wasn't a big picture person. I was always about my task list. I had my task list of things I wanted to run through, but I didn't really take the time to understand how the everyday things I did were leading into the big picture or contributing to the big goal. I think is an important thing for someone, especially when you're just starting out in your career, or you're even starting a new job, you're transitioning, or you're going into a new space. You have to really make that connection very early on the things that I'm doing every day, the seemingly small or big tasks that I'm spending my time on. What is the so what element? Like, and so you're spending 16 hours or whatever on this project, and so what? What is it achieving? The moment you're able to connect it is almost like this purposeful thing we talk about, right? It helps you develop purpose for the work that you are doing. And in the absence of purpose, you're kind of just flailing around. And I think that was the big thing. I would do everything. I was doing the activities, but I wasn't doing them with any purpose or any intention. I was just like, hey, get it done, submit it, move on. Get it done, submit it, move on. But I didn't get how it was connecting to the big picture. The moment I started thinking big picture and seeing how my career, how the things that I was doing every single day contributed to the big picture, it changed how I showed up at work every day. So that was one also like sort of big miss for me. And I would say another thing was, and this is probably one that the mistake a lot of people still make, it was around like this visibility piece, right? That
yes,
my work would speak for itself. Hey, I would, just do your work and, it'll be fine.
Yeah. It's the school mindset in a way, you know what I mean? Like if you thrive at school, you've got a great grade, then, your teacher will let you know about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fair enough, because there's a
100%.
There's a systematized way of grading and showing, so you know what you need to do to get a certain grade. Yep. Not so in the workplace. I think, to be fair, actually, work kind of sometimes works like school too. It's just that we miss the point. If I wrote a term paper at school and I hid it under my bed, I wouldn't get the grade for the term paper. I've done the work. No one can dispute I've done the work, but I didn't submit it, right? But it's the same thing we do. But that's actually what we do at work every day when we choose not to be intentionally visible. That means we're doing the work every day, but we don't submit it, so it doesn't get graded. It's a weird
analogy. Very good analogy. I love it.
It just doesn't get graded, and that's the thing is, I was doing a lot of work, and I would literally hand over my work to somebody else, and that person would submit it as theirs, effectively. Right. I wasn't stepping in front of my work. I wasn't saying, hey, this is what I've been spending all this time doing. This is why you should care about it. And this is the problem it's going to help you solve. I was just, again, task list. I was moving from one thing to another, and I wasn't really thinking about, hey, like, what is the marketing element of this? How can I leverage the work that I'm doing and the value that I'm adding? How can I leverage that intentionally to tell the story of the impact that I'm making? I wasn't doing that intentionally, and it cost me years. My advancement could have been much faster because I was just doing this, and there were people who were not doing nearly as much work but getting a lot more recognition. And there were folks who were taking my work and putting it as theirs. Invariably, what was happening is I was getting overlooked for stretch assignments. I was getting overlooked for good opportunities. I was getting overlooked for like cool projects. Even though I could do it, I wasn't demonstrating my capabilities. I wasn't intentional about that. And so those are like big fails at so many different points in my career. Big fails, actually. And so by the time I started learning these things, and I didn't learn it all at once. By the time I started really understanding, like, hey, this is the failure in what you're doing, and this is the impact it's having on you, the very negative impact it's having on your career, your trajectory, your progression and promotion prospects, your money, your rate of advancement. Awareness is always the first thing. Strategy is the next, right? I was like, okay, now I'm aware. What am I going to do? And then I started, really investing in myself. I got a career coach. I, read tons and tons and tons of books. In the room that I'm sitting in right now, I look up and it's flooded with career books. I invested in myself. I invested in learning the stuff that I basically went to school for my career. I went back and I said, hey, okay, I know the problem. Now I'm aware, but I don't know what to do tomorrow. And this is where, getting that early help, reading widely, investing time can really make the difference, so that coaching program that you've been putting off, do it, because the truth is you don't know what you don't know. And you can completely skip the years of of toiling if you just allowed someone to give you the benefit of their experience in a really well thought out, well packaged, practical manner. So, and I know like you're a coach, I'm a coach, but I don't think we can do the work that we do if we haven't seen the benefit of that for ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's wild. And I think these are the big mistakes, but this was kind of the remedy. The remedy was really investing myself and taking, and knowing that I wasn't just going to learn it over time. I needed to almost expedite that learning process. I needed to give it all of my energy and come out on the other side. And so the product of these mistakes and these learnings is actually what I kind of wrote in my book, Visible Strengths. Is, it's really a book about how career professionals, especially those in the early part of their career, can capitalize on their strengths, contribute value, and communicate results in order to accelerate their career. It's all of the mistakes that I made, and it's my pitch and my almost love letter to say, hey, don't make the same mistake that I made. And I think if you do, it's going to cost you. If you figure it out early, it's going to accelerate you. So yes, I'll pause there.
I can see that you're a coach because as you went through your challenges, you actually gave, like you were saying, the remedy, or at least what you found as a solution for it, which to be honest is perfect because this is literally what the final part of the podcast is about. It's all about hearing from you, any recommendations that you have for anyone who's looking to make the most out of your career. To be very honest with you, in the past, how many minutes, 40 or so, you already gave plenty. And I feel like in that last session, you've obviously talked about the preparedness, the fact that it's important to be visible, submit your homework, if I can just continue on the analogy, but also the importance of like seeing the big picture. So anyone listening to this, don't feel like you're ticking boxes for the sake of ticking boxes. Step out of that boxing ticking mindset for a minute and think, why on earth am I doing this? We don't want you to wake up in whatever 2, 5, 10 years down the line thinking, why on earth am I here, right? Just bringing that awareness today, like you were saying. We'll make sure we include your book in the link of the podcast. So anyone who wants to check it out, you can obviously work on that right now, which obviously you're doing because you're listening to us having this conversation. So well done to you. On that note, as we're wrapping up, any final recommendations that you'd like to share for anyone listening in?
Final recommendations is buy the book, get visible strengths, equip yourself, do what you need to do. But I think the message of hope that I'm always preaching is one that he says, like, forget what everybody says. You can have a career that you love. You can have a career that grows you, that fulfills you, that gives you joy and puts money in your bank account. Like those two things can coexist. And so the pursuit of that is not futile. And I've met a lot of people that are living in the limiting belief that it's not possible. And so they're just ready to take whatever is out there. And I think it's a big limitation. I think you can craft a career out of your strengths and you can have what you desire out of your career. As to having it all, I don't know if I'll put it that way, because I think that there are certain points where you might need to prioritize and, choose one over the other. But I think that you can find balance. So what I would say is that, if you're in a difficult space right now and you're feeling like, hey, this is not working for me, stay the path, do the work, look around you and take some ownership for what parts of it you could do better, assign accountability for the parts that have nothing to do with you, and maybe it's an environmental thing, and that's fine too. But I always say, like, your career is ultimately your responsibility. So take that, ownership for your piece. If it's not working out where you are right now, figure out why it's not working out. If you need to make a move, make the move, and don't delay. Don't spend 5 seconds longer. Bet on yourself. Take the step. Like, careers are long, but at the same time, life is short to kind of be doing something repeatedly that you know is not for you.
Oh, my motto is life is too short to feel unfulfilled at work. So I definitely could not agree more.
But I didn't even know that. But exactly, so it's a perfect kind of, yeah, it's a perfect ending to that. So yeah, so life is too short to be doing something that, yeah, doesn't fulfill you. So that's a good point to end, and hopefully a forward thinking, hopeful note that you can achieve it, but don't waste time in trying to get there. Make it happen. Start making the moves. Start investing in yourself. And just, yeah, and it would all work out.
Love it. So based on this conversation, what would you say is one word summarizing everything you said? Again, no pressure.
Joy.
Ooh, yes, we're gonna finish with that. I love it. Marie, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story today. It was awesome to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with anyone you believe would benefit from hearing it. Because as you know, life is too short to feel unfulfilled at work.